Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Today I will be going over each and every single one of the varieties that we ordered from the Baker Creek 2022 seed catalog. We have like 70 varieties to touch on today, so get comfortable and let's get started. Now, some of you might be wondering why on earth we're talking about seeds in the middle of winter, but winter is actually the perfect time to pick your varieties for the upcoming season and to order the seeds so that you have everything in hand when it does come time to plant. For me personally, when I am trying to figure out what I want to plant next year, what seeds I want to order, I am looking for three different things. The first is varieties that are of particular interest to me that I, for example, couldn't walk into a grocery store or a farmer's market and find. The second is something that I can save seeds from. I'm looking for a variety that is stabilized so that when I save the seeds from a particular fruit, for example, a tomato, I know that if that has been pollinated by the same species that year, the seed that I plant from that tomato next year is going to give me the same plant. That goes into a lot of things that I'm not going to talk about in this video. If you are curious about delving into that, definitely go check out Roots and Refuge. Her name is Jess. She has some great resources for you. And maybe that's a video that we can delve into in the future, just not today. And the third thing that I'm looking for is particularly tasty varieties. Sometimes varieties will sacrifice taste for production or sacrifice production for taste. And for me personally, because I'm a home gardener, because I'm looking to be a homesteader, I don't particularly care if I don't get 10 gallons of tomatoes off of a tomato plant. I just want the tomato to taste really good. And that kind of goes back to the first one, goes back to interest. I don't want to grow things that I can go pick up at the grocery store for $1. I want what I'm growing to be worth it to me, and so those are the particular things that make it worth it to me. So you need to ask yourself, what makes it worth it to you? And so all of those factors come together and play a role in the varieties that I order and where I order. So the reason that I love Baker Creek is that they make it very easy for me to find seeds that hit those points. They sell heirloom seeds, so they're stabilized. I know that I can save seeds from those varieties if I'm careful about how they're pollinated in my garden. I know that I can go to Baker Creek and find varieties that are incredibly tasty and that have been selected for taste over production. And I also know that I can go to them to find varieties that I can't find anywhere else. There are so many things that I did not even know existed until I saw them on the Baker Creek website. And I highly recommend that you guys check them out, but they are by no means the only seed source that you should check out. There's also Johnny's Selected Seeds, which is another online retailer that's really good. There are usually seeds for sale at home improvement stores, at hardware stores. If you have a local seed shop near you, definitely check that out. They're going to have seeds that are probably adapted to your area, which are going to grow even better for you than something that you could order online. So it's all a matter of what works for you. So the varieties that I purchased in 2022 are mostly experiments. These are varieties that I, for the most part, have not grown before and that I want to try out to see how they taste, how they grow, how well adapted they are to the area, whether pests love them just as much as we do, and things like that, so that in future years I can make better decisions about what I do or do not want to grow. So I will start going through these in the order of how they would be planted. So I'll start out with the frost tolerant stuff and with leafy greens. First step, we have Swiss chard. Swiss chard is not anything that I'm particularly fond of. I don't eat a bunch of it, but I know that my friends and family like it, and so I wanted to pick it up. I wanted to try it, and who knows, if I grow it and it tastes really good, I can be converted. That's the plan with a lot of this stuff. Just because I've had it before from the grocery store doesn't mean that I can't find a variety that's particularly tasty that maybe I would enjoy. And next we have kale. I got two varieties of kale. The first one is this Nero di Toscana. It's kind of a dinosaur kale type. It's supposed to be really good as kale chips. It's supposed to be really good in soups. So we will try that out. We'll see how that goes. And I also have a Casper Kale. This I picked up because it is aesthetic, and it's supposed to be really tasty as well. I'll probably say that about every variety that I go through in here, but I just want you guys to know what's supposed to taste good. I've never tried this before. I'm just going to have to grow it and see what happens. Next up is a Napa style cabbage. It's called Golden Beauty. Another reason that I love Baker Creek is that they have an awesome review section on their website, and this is a case where I looked at the reviews of other people who have grown this before, and they convinced me. They said that the texture is really great, that the taste is amazing. So I'm going to try this out, see how it goes. I don't eat a ton of cabbage, but if I do have cabbage, I will chop it up really thin and put it in salads. It's pretty good that way. And then I have a few brassicas here. I think I have 3 brassicas. First up is Romanesco. You'll notice a theme with the Italian heirlooms as well. Italians have a culture that really, really, really cares about their food, not only in how they prepare it, but in how they grow it. And so I am biased towards Italian heirlooms. That doesn't mean they're any better or any worse than any other particular kind of heirloom, but I do enjoy them, so I buy a lot of them. Romanesco, for those of you who don't know, is sort of a kind of in between cauliflower and broccoli, and it has a really cool fractal pattern. You may have seen it in the grocery store before, but it's not anything I've ever eaten a ton of, and so that's another one of those giant experiments. I also picked up cauliflower, not anything I particularly eat a ton of, but I am excited to try to grow it to see if I enjoy it more when I grow it. And then we have broccoli rabe. So this broccoli rabe is similar to broccoli. It's a little bit different. It won't produce a really big head like a typical broccoli would. It'll produce these smaller offshoots. I don't know if you can see the picture very well, but it kind of just looks like baby broccoli. Tastes extremely similar, grows extremely similar. It's just instead of having one really big head in the middle, which is typically the broccoli that you'll buy at the grocery store, it has smaller offshoots all over the side of it. And we have green onion. Green onion is something that I eat a ton of. I probably eat green onion every other day. And this particular variety is actually something I've grown before. I didn't do it justice. I planted it really late. I didn't plant it in an area that got enough sun. I kind of just tried to tuck it into the garden because I wanted to try it. So I'm eager to plant that correctly and see how it does. And next up we have some root vegetables. There are these golden beets. Beets are not anything that I really love. They're good if you roast them in the oven and then take them out, let them cool off a little bit, and peel them. That is the one way that I do enjoy these. And I already have a red beet, so I just wanted to round things out and try out a golden beet as well. And next is one of my favorite varieties. Actually, you can tell it's my favorite because I have 2 of them. But it's this Kyoto Red Carrot. This is actually a Japanese heirloom. This, you guys, is the best carrot I've ever had in my life. I'm not kidding. It is so sweet. It's so tender. And this is definitely something that I'm going to be growing in basically every single one of my gardens from here on out, as long as I can find the seeds for it. And next up, we have more of the summer varieties. So these are things that you will certainly want to plant after the last frost. None of these will tolerate frost. They will get killed off if you try to plant them too early or if you try to hold on to them too late. But I have 2 varieties of a fairly average cucumber. This one, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but it's a Japanese heirloom. It's supposed to be great for fresh eating. It's something you pick young. And then this one is a Parisian pickling cucumber. It's a French heirloom. And it is supposed to be great for preserving as pickles. Now, there's no reason that you can't pickle this fresh eating cucumber or eat this pickling cucumber fresh. This is just based on what people have said when they've grown it, what they've experienced as they've tried to preserve it, so on and so forth. And then I have this really cute guy. So this is they call it a sour gherkin cucumber. It's supposed to taste like cucumber with lemon. And they're tiny, guys. These are like this big. They look like little itty bitty watermelons. They're super cute. They supposedly grow on this really prolific vine. So you certainly, if you plant something like this, you want to have enough room for it. You want to either give it a trellis or give it plenty of ground space to run out. It is not small, and this will take off when it gets a little warmer. I've never even tried that before. I've never seen it in the grocery store. I've never seen it in a farmer's market. So I'm excited to grow it because that's basically the only way I will ever be able to experience it. Next up, I have melons. There is this Petit Gris de Rennes melon, which is a French heirloom, and there's this Silver Yamato watermelon, which I believe is a Japanese heirloom. I could be wrong. But both of these are supposed to have incredible texture, incredible taste. This Petit Gris de Rennes melon is most similar to a cantaloupe. We technically don't have anything quite like it in the United States. And this watermelon is supposed to taste like watermelon 3.0. It's supposed to have a really creamy texture. So I'm excited to try both of those because, again, I would never get to experience something like that if I don't grow it myself. Melons are also something that will take up a ton of space. You can trellis melons if you want to. You just have to be careful to find the fruits as they're developing and to attach them to the trellis somehow, whether that's a plastic bag or an old t-shirt, whatever you have on hand, so that as it's getting bigger and as it's getting heavier, it doesn't pull the whole vine off of the trellis you have it on, and it doesn't fall off and crack open and you never get to eat it. You by no means have to trellis melons. You can certainly let them sprawl across the ground, but they will take up a ton of space that way. So it just depends on what works for you. Next up, I have all kinds of squash. So I will separate these into summer squash and winter squash. That is a relatively arbitrary delineation that we as humans have made. The only difference is summer squash is harvested early while it's young, and winter squash is harvested once it's completely mature. So a pumpkin would be a good example of winter squash, and zucchini would be a good example of a summer squash. But this variety is actually special because it's supposed to work, well, both ways. This is a Zucchino Rampicante. This is another Italian heirloom. You can see on the package it is illustrated as a young fruit, but you can leave it on the vine. You can wait until this outer rind turns kind of orangey, and you can prepare it in the same way that you would use, for example, a pureed pumpkin. And then, let's see, I have 3 varieties of summer squash. There is a rugosa friulana. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. There's a white scallop, and there's this rondenise. So this is a French heirloom, this is an American heirloom, and this is an Italian heirloom. All of these are supposed to have really great flavor. Squash in general are fairly prolific, but they can be susceptible to squash bugs and things like powdery mildew. So I want to try to grow a few different varieties just in case something doesn't do well, then we still have squash to eat off of. And I have 2 varieties of, there we go, 2 varieties of winter squash. So there's this Honeynut Squash and this Jack B. Little. I got the Honeynut to eat, and I got the Jack B. Little, honestly, to just have some really cute tiny pumpkins around the fall season. You could still totally eat these. These are edible, but they'll probably be, I don't know, like that big. And this Honeynut is actually a smaller variety as well. This was bred from butternut, and it's supposed to just be a smaller butternut, and supposedly, because it's smaller, it condenses all the sweetness and all the flavor that's in a typical butternut into a smaller package so that it's a little more flavorful. I've heard of Honeynut, and you can, I'm sure, find it in some stores. I've never been able to find it, so I am very excited to grow that and try it. Okay, so moving on to even more summer varieties, I have this Jing okra. Jing orange okra. Okra is never anything that I have grown before. I am from the South. I am certainly familiar with okra. I've just never personally grown it. I do know that it is supposed to be incredibly prolific. Sometimes you have to harvest it even as often as twice a day, because the other trick with okra is to harvest it young. If you leave it too long, it's still edible, it's just tough, and it's not enjoyable to eat. But if you miss it, just leave it on the plant and let it fully develop, and then end up saving it for seeds. It's not a missed opportunity, it's just a different opportunity. And then another thing I've never tried before is corn. So I got this Astronomy Domain Sweet because it looks really cool. There's supposed to be a few different colors of kernels that develop in this, and this is a sweet corn, so it's something that you would eat off the cob. It's not a popcorn or a dent corn. And it looks like I have 3 varieties of beans. The first one is a typical bean variety. I am very, very picky about my green beans, actually, so I'm excited to try this. This is supposed to be very tender. It's supposed to not really have strings to it. If I bite into a green bean and there's a string in it, I can't do it. So I have another variety that I also enjoy, but I want to try to grow this because sometimes pests or diseases will get to the plants that we really want, and we have to learn to share with them. So in growing a second variety, that increases our chances that we would get as many green beans as we're hoping for, even if something were to happen to one of them. Another variety is soybeans. So I actually drink a lot of soy milk, and soy is something that I would like to know more where it comes from, but that is hard to do if you buy it from the store. So I'm looking forward to growing that in my backyard, letting them cure all the way, letting them develop all the way on the plant, pulling them off, and making soy milk with that. You can also harvest them early, harvest them green, and eat them as edamame. They're also very nutritious and very enjoyable that way. And the last variety of bean that I have is this Taiwan yard-long bean. These are also called noodle beans. And I don't know if you can see in the picture, but they are so long. This is not anything that you would want to cook in the same way as a typical green bean. They're supposed to be softer, so you don't want to boil them or anything like that. But put them in a hot pan, stir fry them for a couple minutes till they're just a little bit softened, and they're supposed to be really good. That is all things I've heard. I've certainly never grown that. I've never eaten that, so I'll have to try that out and verify that. And next we have tomatoes. So I actually already have several tomato varieties, so I didn't go too crazy, but I did get 4. So 2 of these are more for putting in sauces and preserving, and then 2 of these are for fresh eating. The first one is a Roma tomato, definitely an Italian variety. The Roma tomato is supposed to be really good for sauces. It has a lower water content, and it has honestly a little bit of a mealy texture, so I don't personally enjoy eating them fresh. You certainly can if you want to, but they are ideal for sauces, for canning and preserving because of their low water content. And then we have this Principe Borghese tomato. This is also an Italian variety. And the Principe Borghese is supposed to be really great for sun drying. You don't have to sun dry it if you want. You can put it in the oven on a low heat, and that will dry it as well. You can set it outside if you have an outdoor hanging dryer. You can put it in a dehydrator if you have that. But both of these I'm eager to try so that we can try to keep the tomato goodness going year round, even when we can't unfortunately pick them straight from the garden and eat them. The next 2 varieties are fresh eating varieties. They're called slicing tomatoes. Another Italian variety, this one is called Pantano Romanesco. It is a fresh eating tomato. It's an Italian variety. It's supposed to taste good. I don't really know anything about it beyond that. I've never grown it before, so I will have to let you guys know. And the last one is not, surprisingly, an Italian heirloom. It is a Brandywine tomato. This one's yellow. You can get it in a few different colors. It is supposed to be a very superb tomato. It's supposed to be incredibly flavorful. I've never tried to grow this or any other color of Brandywine tomato before. So I will see how it performs, and I will see how it tastes. And then I have all kinds of peppers. There's so many peppers. Peppers are something that I really enjoy throwing into dishes and cooking with. I don't really eat them by themselves, but they do add a wonderful flavor to dishes. So these first two are not hot. These are sweet peppers. So there's no spice to these, but these are Corbaci and Jimmy Nardello. I have actually grown both of these varieties before, and I very much enjoyed them. They're great to throw into dishes for a little bit of extra flavor. They actually dry very well. I set some of the extras aside from last year's garden on the table, not even meaning to dry them, and they just dried themselves. So that was actually a wonderful surprise, and I'm still using them in the kitchen. And then all the rest of these have at least a little bit of heat to them, but I'll go through them from least heat to most heat. So this is, I'm not even going to try to say this, I'm going to butcher it, but this is actually a Caribbean heirloom, and it is specifically a seasoning pepper. It has a little bit of heat. It's supposed to be less than a jalapeno, so this is something that I could certainly still palate. I'm not a spicy food person, but I'm excited to try these, and they look so pretty. I mean, all those colors, the purple, the red, the green. So we'll see how those go. They are also supposed to be a little bit of a smaller pepper. And we have Poblano and jalapeno. There's nothing crazy about these varieties. These are just varieties that Baker Creek had up on their website. Nothing particularly special, but I want to try to grow as much food as I can in the garden, so I picked these up. There's certainly things that we will go through, whether it's in salsa or whatever else. Okay, and then the last three of these are actually pretty spicy. There is the Sugar Rush Peach, which is supposed to be almost equally as sweet as it is hot. I don't know Scoville units. I don't know much about it. I know that it's too spicy for me, so this is going to be for Antonio to eat. Certainly, he enjoys making hot sauces and things out of them. He enjoys torturing himself with spice for some reason that I will never understand. But there's this chocolate habanero. Typically this is not the color that habaneros come in, but I saw this and thought I would pick it up because it looks fun. And then there's this cayenne long thin. Cayenne is a spice that I will keep in my spice cabinet for sure. So even though I'm not going to throw it in my food, it is handy to put in things like taco seasoning. It is actually tasty. You just have to be really careful with it because it is very spicy. So I got that to try to grow a few of them to dry and to make our own cayenne powder. So that is actually all the vegetables I have, and the remaining varieties that I have are herbs and flowers. So I'll delve into herbs first with basil. I actually already have a basil variety. I think it's Emily basil, but I saw this Genovese, also an Italian heirloom, and I had to grab it. So Genovese basil is the basil that they use in Italian cooking, specifically for its flavor. So I wanted it before they were sold out, and I saw that they had it, so I just grabbed that one. And I have so many other herbs in here. Herbs are not really anything that I've dabbled in growing before, but I would very much like to establish an herb garden, so I just picked up a bunch of different varieties that piqued my interest. This is an orange yellow thyme. It's supposed to have a little bit more of a citrus flavor to it. So I'm eager to try that out, and let's see, yeah, I think the rest of these varieties are just run-of-the-mill varieties. They are heirlooms, but there's oregano, we have parsley. I did get a curled parsley because I just don't like flat leaf parsley, so it doesn't make sense for me to grow it. We have sage, because we have to have sage in Sage's garden, right? And then marjoram. I'm sure I'll cook with other herbs, and I will add to that herb garden as it gets established. I just want to learn what I enjoy cooking with and what I don't, so that I don't plant something that I'm never going to use. And then the rest of these are either fun things or medicinal herbs. We have dandelion. Dandelion's great if you harvest the greens. It's very nutritious. Throw it in salads. Eat it raw. You can also harvest the root and make a tea out of it if you care to. Lavender. I actually don't like the smell of lavender, but it can be therapeutic. I do know my friends and family enjoy the smell of it, so I'm gonna grow that for them. And I guess if it really bugs me, I can pull it out. So we have anise hyssop. This is supposed to be a great medicinal herb, and I looked all of this up at some point to decide what I wanted, but I could not tell you guys off the top of my head what each of these are good for. But yarrow's good for a medicinal herb as well. We have chamomile, which, if nothing else, makes a wonderful like sleepy time tea. And we have calendula. And then the other two that I have in this category are superfoods, also a relatively random designation that people have invented, but they're just supposed to be very nutritious for you. I got this goji berry, which will produce a bush. So this isn't something that you need to plant every year. This should perennialize. It should come back year to year. And once it gets established, I think in the second year is when it'll start giving you fruit. So the first year you plant this, you won't see any berries, but next year you will. And the other one is moringa. Moringa can perennialize if you live in a warm enough place. I don't know if where we are going to be planting it is going to be warm enough for it, but we will find out. And you can plant it as an annual if you want to. This is actually a tree. I don't know if you can see, but it says dwarf. So this is supposed to be something a little bit more manageable so that you're not planting this giant tree. If you want to, you can also move it indoors in the winter so that it'll survive if you want to keep it surviving and you don't want to replant it. Okay, and the last category of seed varieties that I have is flowers. I will also go through the flowers in the order that you would typically plant them, from frost hardy to summer varieties. So the only frost hardy kind that I have are poppies. These two I got purely for aesthetics. They're so beautiful. I don't know if you can see, but they have the craziest pattern on their leaves. They call this one Mother of Pearl, and it's a mix of all different kinds of colors, and they call this one Amazing Gray. This is all the same color. But poppies are actually technically edible, and so that's why I got this giant rattle poppy, so that I can try to, at the very least, harvest some poppy seeds. So I don't know if you see this in the middle, but after the flower blooms and sort of dies off, the middle will get bigger and will develop into these rattles, these larger green pods. And when you crack that open, that's where the poppy seeds are. The rest of these are just purely for fun because they're beautiful. So we have scabiosa. It's hard to tell on the package, but this is actually a really unique, really beautiful flower. I don't believe that the plant grows too tall. I've never grown these before, but it just produces this incredibly unique flower. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for something that I can go into the supermarket and find a bouquet of. I'm looking for really unique varieties that I can grow because I can't find it anywhere else. And we have zinnias. Zinnias are actually pretty common, but this particular kind has thinner petals. I don't know if you can see that, but you call that petal structure cactus style. This is a mix. It has several different colors in it, so I can save seeds from the colors that I enjoy and really not continue the colors that I don't. I'm really not a hot pink person. There's several pink varieties in there, so I'll probably phase those out. But that's just something cool that I picked up and wanted to plant. We have two different kinds of cosmos. The first one is this, what do they call it? Fizzy Rose Picote. So the picote refers to the fact that the middle of the petal is sort of white and then the edges are a darker color. Cosmos are something that grow really, really well. They take off, they establish into like a hedge if you don't cut them back. They produce a whole bunch of flowers. They're really frilly, they're really thin, they're very beautiful. So I saw those and had to pick them up. And then this next one is arguably my favorite flower ever. These are called Black Magic Cosmos. I actually ordered 3 packets. Unfortunately, only 2 packets made it into the order, but I contacted Baker Creek, I let them know, and they were so nice. Probably within like an hour of when I emailed them, they said that they had packed up the extra missing envelope and sent it over to me. So I was very grateful for that. But these are actually a very rare flower, and they're not something that we were previously able to plant the seeds of. They develop a root, and so you can reproduce them through the rootstock. But fertile seeds that would actually grow a plant and grow flowers were very rare, and someone somewhere figured out how to fix it. I don't know all the details on that. I'm just glad that I can find those. If you do choose to purchase those, I do think that they still have a few left on their website. Know that there's only like 4 seeds in a packet because they are rare, because it's a rare flower, and viable seeds are hard to come by. Just know that you're not going to get like 200 seeds in there. So if you want a bunch of them, definitely buy multiple packets. And Coreopsis is next. It actually looks kind of similar to that Black Magic Cosmo, but it has this perimeter of white around the petals. This is not anything I've grown before, so I'll have to put that in the ground and see what happens. And then I have some dahlias. I do love dahlias. Dahlias are not anything I typically grow from seed. I usually buy the rootstock because they're perennials, and that's how they grow best. But these, I believe, are a little bit smaller, so they shouldn't have a problem growing from seed and producing flowers the first year. But they will come back. Wherever you plant the seed, it'll develop a rootstock, and I think as long as you live in something warmer than like zone 5, maybe zone 6, they'll come back the next year. If it gets too cold, that root will freeze, it'll decay and it won't come back. And we have some snapdragons. This is a variety pack. It's called Tequila Sunrise. It's supposed to have some of this darker maroon red, that orange, and that pink and yellow. And the very last one is Amaranth. Amaranth is actually technically edible. I don't particularly care for it, so I don't grow it for food. But it is called Love Lies Bleeding Red. And this amaranth is actually supposed to grow really tall and then sort of fall over on itself. So it produces these really beautiful curves in the flower garden, and especially in arrangements. So this will add an extra dimension to flower gardens so that it won't all be, plants with a flower coming up and the head. So anywhere that you can add different layers, different textures, whether it's something that it has a totally different kind of flower head, or whether it's a shorter flower, that's only going to help make your garden more beautiful. So that is all the varieties that I had to go over with you guys today. I will link the Baker Creek website down below with all the varieties that I touched on. I don't know whether they still have every single one of those in stock, so if you're interested, you guys will have to go check that out. And I will also be posting a video for our 2022 garden plan, talking about everything that we're planting, talking about where we're planting it, when we're planting it, all that good stuff. So if you guys are interested in that video as well, please subscribe. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, and I'll see you next time.